everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Kistler O'Brien podcast. I'm Tyler Trumbauer with Kistler O'Brien Fire Protection. We have a brand new episode for you here today. If you've missed any of our previous ones, we're building a nice library there on YouTube. Search us Kistler O'Brien Fire Protection, or you can go check us out on any of your favorite podcast platforms such as Apple or Spotify. For today, we're going to dive into some key trending topics in the fire and life safety industry with two very knowledgeable life safety experts from our friends over at Amerex. Chris Bullock rejoins us here on the KOB podcast. He's the regional sales manager up in our region here where KOB is located in the Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware area. He also goes a little more north as well in his territory. And joining him is his colleague, Jamie Knowles, the industry relations manager for Amerex. Gentlemen, thank you both for giving me a few minutes of your time and all the wisdom you're about to impart on us and our viewers.
Certainly do our best. Appreciate the time to coordinate with one of our more valuable distributors for sure, sir. Appreciate it.
Sure, Jamie, absolutely. And we'll start with you since you're so complimentary to us here right off the gate. You're the industry relations manager, as we mentioned, for Amerex. So kind of what do you focus in on your role? I think, you get to talk to a lot of folks, it sounds like, probably really have your finger on the pulse of the industry. What does that actually mean in a day-to-day?
It's an interesting question because when Amerex challenged me with this position, I was privileged to do it. Anytime you can represent the factory that you work for and the 400 employees that build our fire extinguishers every day, that is a privilege that I take very seriously. And I essentially travel around the country going to the different trade shows in different industries around fire protection. And then I also sit on different code committees like NFPA 10, different performance standards like UL 300 for UL. And I conglomerate a sort of book of information that I can then use for our company and disseminate that information out to our industry. So really what I'm trying to do is, as you stated, have a pulse on the industry, what's coming down the pike, right? What issues are we dealing with today? Do we have solutions? How do we talk about that? Educating the industry has never been more important. I'm in the middle of this year. One of my goals is to write 12 tech tips for our technicians out there in the world, to give them a catalog of information for them to use, much like you're doing with this podcast, right? So we've never been in a position in our industry where there's more information floating out there in the world for technicians to grab a hold of and use. And that's really our endeavor, is to make our industry better at every turn. I also participate on the Fire Equipment Manufacturers Association and do a little lobbying on behalf of our industry to make sure that fire extinguishers remain in the important places that they're at in our building codes and our fire codes. So yeah, I kind of try to do my best to represent our company to the industry, and then take all the information from the industry, conglomerate it, and then push it back out in usable fashion, hopefully.
Absolutely. And yeah, certainly a lot of content coming out there. And like you said, a lot to decipher from as well. Chris, you're a repeat guest here on the KOB podcast, but for those that may have missed your episode with us before, and if you have, I highly recommend you go back and check it out. It's a great tip, if you will, to go back to Jamie's phrase. Just kind of give us a quick overview of your role with Amerex and your kind of relationship with the life safety industry.
Sure. Yeah. As you mentioned earlier, I'm the Northeast sales manager for Amerex. So I cover the entire Northeast manager and the distribution network within that territory. So helping distributors like Kistler O'Brien out, working with end users out there in the field to get Amerex products spec'd, and a whole variety of other stuff. Training, just got back from doing some training here this week in our kitchen industrial systems up in New York. So everything that entails in just supporting our product line out through the Northeast territory. I've been in the industry for about 20 years overall. Started as a first responder firefighter just over 20 years ago, and been worked for a distributor for many years, then moved into the manufacturing world on the fire protection side a few years ago.
Appreciate that. And Jamie, I know your kind of career arc and relationship with the industry is similar in length, as well as kind of your engagement with different organizations, et cetera. If you kind of can give us a little bit of your background to where we got today. And like you said, the current challenge you got, I know you had previous roles as the industry relations manager, but how did we get here?
Sure. So my story starts very early. I am a military child, and my father and my stepmother were both retired from the Navy. And when I was growing up in the Pacific Northwest, I belonged to a youth group called Sea Cadets. And when I was 14 years old, I went to San Diego, California, and went to a 2-week Navy boot camp. At that boot camp, they took a 55-gallon drum of JP5 jet fuel, laid it on its side, and set that on fire, and then handed us fire extinguishers and taught us to use them. So I discharged my first high performance extinguisher on a fire at 14 years old, and I have been hooked ever since. This is what I've been doing since that moment. I joined the Navy as a damage controlman. Was a shipboard firefighter for 4 years. Got out of the Navy, got a job with a small fire equipment distributor in Spokane, who sold to Grinnell. Worked for Grinnell for a few years, and then I was at a company called Oxart for 15 years. And in those times, I was a technician. I crawled in and out of kitchen hoods and paint booths. I did a lot of portable fire extinguisher work, but I was on the ground in a van doing that work. In 2010, I came to the manufacturing side of the business, worked for Ansel for about 5 years, and then I've been at Amerex for 9. And on the manufacturing side of the business, I really find that I have found my home in this business. I've really been able to translate what I learned as a distributor, as a technician, and take that and use it to both sell fire suppression systems and fire extinguishers for the company over the years. And then now in this industry relations role where I get a real opportunity to hopefully put positive change and positive effect on everything that I touch.
Yeah, certainly. And I think a lot more folks would get into the industry if they had that first intro that you had with, jet fuel extinguishing opportunity instead of many folks' introduction, which is in elementary school and learning to stop, drop, and roll every year. Although that is valuable, I don't know if it has the impact that you had. So maybe that's a good, recruiting tip. I think we've talked about recruiting folks to the industry on this podcast before with various guests. Might have to implement that tactic, although I don't know how many folks would recommend that from a safety perspective, but certainly.
I will say that Navy damage controlmen who service fire equipment on their ships all day, right? Honestly, it's a nice translation to our industry. And if you look throughout our industry, it's littered with former Navy damage controlmen. So also Air Force firefighters and Army firefighters and those sort of things. So it really is a nice translation into our industry.
Yeah. So Jamie, Chris and I, we talked about fire extinguishers in the past, and I see you have plenty back there as well. So, Chris, I kind of want to pivot this to you a little bit now as we've talked about fire extinguishers before and all the different unique use cases for them and environments and maybe where they should be and shouldn't be. And I think one place that a lot of people have fire extinguishers, and that's great, but now they're trying to say, can I use my fire extinguisher if this battery catches on fire in my garage, or if this goes wrong, or if my phone blows up in my pocket? Like you see those things on the news. Folks have extinguishers, hopefully, right, at a minimum in their home fire safety plan. So, Chris, what has been your experience so far, and maybe the same as Jamie's or different, when it comes to that probably most trending topic, number one, of the lithium-ion batteries and kind of the extinguisher relationship to that? Does it play a role and all of that? We can get into that, but really kind of what have you seen and what have you heard in the industry as you traverse your territory when it comes to this newfound danger, which is lithium-ion batteries?
Yeah, well, sure. Obviously it's probably the hottest topic in the industry right now. And if, Jamie, all the other regional sales managers included, we probably get a question about it daily, if not daily, certainly weekly, but nearly daily. I just had an email this morning, right off the bat, from a good customer diving into some deeper topics about it. So it's a hot topic. There's not always perfect solutions right now, and Jamie and I will kind of tag team that and kind of get into some of that topic there. But everyone wants to know, what is happening in the industry with these products, what can be done out there currently, and where are we headed? And it's, we've got some insight to that now, but a lot of it is still developing. And we've had this, the world has given this industry the ability to skyrocket forward way quicker than the pace of, as we know, the fire protection industry, it moves, which is a little bit slower than a lot of other industries out there when it comes to codes, regulations, testings, and things of that nature. So unfortunately, when it comes to electric batteries, lithium-ion or electric, products, lithium-ion batteries, things like EVs, that the development of that in just the last year, in just the last 2 years, is light years ahead. So we're definitely playing catch up to that respect. And yeah, there's a lot to consider when it comes to that.
Jamie, I'm sure you hear it all. So can you kind of briefly a little bit parse what's fact and fiction right now?
I can, yeah. The first thing that we need to start with, and we'll also end with it, is safety. End of story, right? That is the beginning and end of the entire conversation. And the reason it is because our products are different than a lot of other fire protection products. Most fire protection products are installed in a building and deployed as a system of some kind, right? Our products are in people's hands, right? They're being used by an individual, and usually a layman, right? Not somebody who's been thoroughly trained in fire protection, that's for sure, right? So we want to make sure everybody stays safe, right? And the other thing to talk about is the environments that you're going to find lithium batteries, right? Lithium-ion batteries are found in every aspect of our lives these days, right? From our home use, right? What do we do with our batteries once they are unusable anymore? How do we dispose of those? That becomes really, really important because we put them in the garbage. They end up in the compactor in the garbage truck, right? Starts a fire in the middle of the garbage truck. And now the garbage truck has no place, right, to do anything with that fire except dump it on your road, right? And that's a huge problem in the garbage industry, right? For sure. And that's just one example. So let's think about a lithium-ion battery hazard really quick, okay? As you stated, they're multi-sized. There's a lot of different things that happen here, but we're going to find them all over. What's going to happen is they're going to degrade at some point, meaning if there's an impact on that lithium battery or there's heat applied to it or it was poorly manufactured, if it was being charged by equipment that's not designed to charge it, maybe it's putting too much electricity into it at one time, all of those things can cause thermal runaway. When that battery goes into thermal runaway, there's nothing anybody can do to stop it. It is going to happen. Right? So when it goes into thermal runaway, what's it going to do? The first thing it's going to do is start shooting sparks and fire outward from it. And depending on the size of the battery, that could be 10, 20 feet, right? Well, so you have to look at the fire extinguisher that you potentially would use and say, what is the discharge range of that fire extinguisher? If it's only 10 feet and we're shooting sparks and fire 15 to 20, that's not okay for our layman to use, right? Also, during that thermal runaway or degradation process, at some point, that battery is going to discharge its electrical charge. So the user of that fire extinguisher must have a fire extinguisher in their hands that has a Class C rating, right? Because the agent inside of that extinguisher with a Class C rating will not conduct electricity. So they can safely discharge that fire extinguisher onto any fire and not worry about being shocked. So those are the first two thresholds we care about. The user must be safe. They want to be able to approach the fire with an extinguisher that has the right discharge range and a Class C rating in order to protect themselves. Mm-hmm. Now, what kind of fires does a lithium battery present? A, B, C, and it's a misnomer. It doesn't actually produce D because there's lithium ion, not actual lithium in these batteries. But it presents this multifaceted fire that a regular ABC dry chemical extinguisher is not prepared to work with, not prepared to extinguish. So the answer here, stay safe, and there is not a UL listed solution on the market for this hazard. Now, there are some fire extinguishers on the market that are saying they are used for lithium batteries. But it's important to look at the listings of those fire extinguishers If you look at them, all of them have the same listing, which is a Class A rating, a 1A rating, right? They don't have a Class B rating for the gases that'll be shot off of this, right? Those are Class B gases, right? They don't have a Class C rating to protect you against electrical shock. So they're not safe to use in that endeavor, right? They don't have that Class C rating, nor do they have the discharge range. And if you look at the Class A rating they have, right, it's a 1A. Well, we require a 2A rating to protect any occupancy in this country, right? And a water fire extinguisher has a 2A rating. So these extinguishers that are saying they're good for lithium batteries are half as good as water. Right? And the main thing is I don't believe that all of them present the safety thresholds that are important for our users, right? And again, I started with safety. I will end with safety. Do not approach a fire with a fire extinguisher today unless it has a Class C rating, and there are none of them on the market.
Chris, that's tremendous information we just got from Jamie there. And I mean, I think maybe some folks will be a little underwhelmed by the lack of response by the industry, like you said. But, one thing I think that this is clear, right? Like he said, we don't really have a solution for it. Some things that maybe are on the market right now, maybe for some of these smaller batteries, could potentially at least provide some type of reaction that you could utilize. But again, you got to be able to think quick, have that, knowledge. Is this ready to combat that fire? My point here right now is, and I'd love to hear your take on this, is we grow up hearing you should have fire protection plan for your home. You should have fire extinguishers in your home, and we have recommended locations. With the amount of batteries that we have in our home today, I feel like the need for a fire extinguisher, even if it's not the right solution for the right fire, maybe that'll come down the line, is more of a need now than ever. Like, we need more extinguishers now than ever. I mean, do you agree with that? I think with what we have in our homes today, just necessitate that.
Yeah, I mean, you're hit the nail on the head. When it comes to both residential and commercial use, in most scenarios, the protection that you need, or we would recommend, is what they've already got, but probably just more of it. And that's for two reasons. One reason is you're going to have, as Jamie mentioned, this fire that's going to start off when it gets to that thermal runway, and it can't be stopped. So knowing that you have a fire that can't be stopped, what else is going to catch on fire by product of a fire that is not going out? And that is the means to protection when it comes to life safety, as Jamie mentioned, first and foremost, and also an aspect of property loss. We're not asking people to become firefighters out there, but if it is something that is blocking a means of egress, putting someone, directly, in between, or the fire being directly in between a person and an exit, that's something that they need to have whatever's there. And they may not be able to put out the product that's on fire, but can they stop that product from catching on something, that's close enough to it? So an example I use in a commercial scenario would be if they've got an electric forklift in a warehouse, okay, they're not going to be able to put out the electric forklift. But if that electric forklift was up against a racking of inventory and that warehouse manager's office is right by that in a little cubicle farm or an out, cut building type thing, what does that guy need to put out the fire of the inventory that's not out, just so he can get out of the building or get away from that area safely or exit his office? Same with the home use, is there you see up in New York City right now, a lot of the e-bike fires that are happening in buildings where those bike storages are right at the front door, those means of egress where people would exit the building. So what can they use to put out spot fires or things around that to be able to get out of that area? And in addition to that, real quick, it's also from a preventative nature too. So let's say the lithium battery is not the catalyst for the fire, but you don't want that to catch on fire because it's going to make the fire or the situation a whole lot worse. So if you've got, let's just say you've got, in your garage, a box that caught on fire because it was too close to an electrical outlet, but right above that box is a shelf where all your power tools are sitting right now. Okay, you want to make sure that box or that fire where it's originated from is handled as quickly as possible before those batteries catch on fire and it turns into a fire that is now uncontrollable.
Great point. And Jamie, so I guess it sounds like with what you said, safety top of mind, right? So be mindful of your surroundings, of your life safety, and all of that as top priority. But to the great illustration that Chris just said, right now, with the equipment that we have on the market, that's UL listed, that likely is in a commercial building or a residential home, folks should be worried about or focused on safety with a subhead of containment instead of extinguishment, because the product can help contain the fire or contain it from spreading to a lithium ion scenario, and maybe not full complete extinguishment. Is that kind of a good takeaway, you think?
100%. You should, as a homeowner or a business owner, a business operator, you should ask yourself, where are my lithium batteries and what am I doing with them? Right. And they're going to be all over. Your employees might have vape pens, right? That have them, right? All the way up to, as Chris stated, an electric forklift or something like that inside of a building, with everything in between, with the power tools type of things being probably the most prominent these days, right? So ask yourself, okay, where are my batteries, right? And how should I be handling those? So the first evolution you always do with a battery of some kind is you're going to charge it, right? So what are the best practices for charging? Well, the best practices are certainly to use OEM equipment, right? If you're using an off-brand piece of equipment, I say this with all of us having some gas station charger for our iPhone that we purchased on the road someplace, right? All of that is less good, less than ideal, right? We want to use OEM charging equipment because it was designed for that equipment. And if you deliver too much electricity too quickly into these things, you can create thermal runaway in some cases, right? So charging in a good place, right? Steel and concrete is your friend. And put those charging places in the most practical, safe spot you can, right? That is, I think, the first thought process. The other thing is, if you're in your house and you have an electric car, right? Are you charging it in your garage? And if you are, right, where are the bedrooms in your house? I don't have an electric car for one reason, because my garage is underneath the bedroom I'm standing in and the bedroom that my daughter is in, right? And the normal house has half-inch drywall, right, in the garage area, right? Whereas a commercial space will have double stacked 5/8 drywall that's fire taped, right? So consider, like, if I'm going to charge a car in my house, I'm probably going to redo my garage and put in double stacked 5/8 drywall with fire taping, right? To make sure that it's contained. Or I'm going to charge it outside of my facility or outside of my house, right? The other thing I want to make sure that we tell everybody is we are hot on the trail of any agent that is out there being touted to be used in this space. We're testing everything. And right now, the leading candidate for the best agent, right, is deionized water, because it does not conduct electricity, right? And it's got a lot of uses. It's all of the other agents all conduct electricity of some kind. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not good agents. They're good agents, but they're more practically delivered by the fire service that has PPE, right, and can approach those larger fires and that sort of thing. So I don't want anybody to think we're talking bad about these other agents that are on the market. They all have good possibilities. They just have less of a possibility out of a portable fire extinguisher and more of a possibility for the fire service. And ultimately, we need to arm the fire service with good agents and good solutions in this space as well.
Jamie, you are traveling the country, if not the world, talking to leaders in the industry, involved in, code and regulation creation and modification. For those that may be holding off on, really going in on EVs or e-bikes, or are just very concerned about the batteries that they currently have in their life, what do we have as far of a timeline? What's the vision? I know you said that you guys at Amerex and the industry in general are looking at this for a solution, but are we closer today than we were 90 days ago, than we were 6 months ago? Like, kind of what does the future hold as far as to where we can get something that maybe is registered, UL listed, and can provide a little bit more comfort to consumers?
We're still a ways off. As I stated, we test everything that comes down the market, it comes down the pike, and we will continue to do so. As soon as something hits our desk that's possible, that keeps everybody safe, that extinguishes, that does the things we want, then we'll get it on the market. Make no mistake. But the industry is not sitting still. I recently participated in a kickoff meeting for a task group within UL to tackle lithium-ion battery hazards. Right. First thing you have to do is build standards. Right. There's no standards for these things. Right. So we have to build some standards. Then once we have some standards to test product to, right, then we can take that, we can turn that into usable fire codes, right, that can protect everybody across the country. But that is still developing. Also, to answer your question, I would say it really depends on the industry that we're talking about. This is all encompassing when it comes to different industries. The fire service has their concern and how they're going to deal with catastrophic situations, right? As I stated earlier, the garbage or waste industry has their own challenges with people throwing these things away and them ending up in compactors, right? In the industrial side of the business, everybody's trying to utilize lithium batteries for savings. In the mining world, at Mine Expo last year, they launched a 240-ton, right, electric haul truck. So it holds 240 tons of dirt in the back of it, right, and it's 100% electric, right? Imagine if that thing goes up, right? So the industry is evolving, right? And we will continue to evolve with it. UL and NFPA both have task groups set up evaluating this. The UL Research Foundation, the NFPA Research branch, those are all on it. And it's at the tip of everyone's tongue. It's just a developing situation. So as we've sort of said, stay safe, use some practical thought processes about your batteries. And as soon as we have solutions, we'll let you know.
Certainly stay safe and stay tuned really is the certain thing here. So gentlemen, real quick here, just a few more minutes left. I kind of want to wrap this up here. We've had such a great education here on the battery part, but I just want to get your guys' takes on kind of what do you see as another big trend or change coming up on the horizon? Chris, I think we talked about this a little bit before in our previous episode, but what do you kind of see if we all agree that the battery is topic number one? What do you kind of see as maybe topic number two or a trend that you're kind of on the horizon looking for here in 2025 and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, I think one trend that I think we kind of already discussed while saying in the kind of the same lane here, at least for this, is, prevention is key when it comes to lithium-ion battery fires. And some of the products that we've got coming out and we've already got is things like our gas detection system for vehicles. And what that does is when that battery goes into a thermal runaway, it releases a gas that we have the ability to sense and capture and alert before that fire starts. So, Jamie mentioned we're still some ways out, and it's not for lack of trying for things, with some standards and some answers out there. But prevention in the meantime, in a variety of ways, is going to be key. So when it comes to a vehicle, knowing that fire is going to start, and whether that is something like a bus to get people just enough time to get off a bus, in our region here, Tyler, that Kistler services, it could be, you've got a lot of buildings that are housing vehicles. That's a residential, a residential structure, but also something as simple in an urban setting where you've got parking garages or fleet warehouses or bus terminals or things that are just on a lower level where you've got multiple floors of offices and residentials above that. So, we've got the ability to detect those gases, know when a fire is going to start, and alert the user. So I think we're going to see more expansion in that world, in the prevention world, coming down the pipeline as we, coincide with working on a solution.
Jamie,
Tyler, just to chime in really quickly there, I would like to sort of tie a bow on that lithium battery discussion by saying that, we're not down on lithium battery technology. It is groundbreaking and it's very good. And we should understand from a fire protection standpoint, we have traded a high volume of hydrocarbon fires, right? Gasoline type of fires, right? A high number of those, right? Where we knew exactly what to do with that fire. Still very hazardous, right? Still very frequent, right? But we knew exactly what to do with that fire. Now we've traded that for a much less frequent fire, right? But it's a battery fire that we don't know what to do with. So there's a net gain in safety here to a certain degree, in that we're trading all these hydrocarbon hazards for these battery hazards, and they're going to go into thermal runaway way, way less than gasoline will be ignited, right? And the outlook to think about here is, we in this country have been able to successfully use a very volatile hydrocarbon, gasoline, successfully and safely for decades with laymen across the country, right? All of us fill our own cars. All of us work with gasoline on our lawnmowers and everything else. We're going to get there for this industry too, okay? So we're already starting in a place with less fires than we had before. Now these fires are very volatile, right? And then to coattail into your question about what's coming down, what are the next things that are happening in fire protection that people should be aware of? NFPA last week launched an effort to create their own licensing certification program for portable fire extinguishers. So it appears that that'll compete with the ICC NAFED certification that's out there. We are a proponent of licensing and certification. It is a big deal. And a decade or so ago, NFPA wrote licensing and certification, verbiage into most of the standards. And now we have a bunch of states out there that have guidelines in the NFPA standards, but they don't have actual licensing or certification programs within their state. So they're all trying to build that. And do that. And I really, really want our distributors participating in that at a local and state level to control the outcome, so that we end up with reasonable laws and reasonable licenses and reasonable certifications for our portable fire extinguisher and pre-engineered type of services, right? I think we have a situation in Philadelphia where they're trying to make an industrial dry chem system have to have a NICET certification in special hazards in order to design it, which would be a very large overkill for that situation. So we really want to control those things, and NFPA stepping up, creating another licensing program in that space. And then the last thing that's coming down the pike is on a completely different subject, but it's fire protection. All of our distributors, like Kistler O'Brien, not only do portable fire extinguishers, but they do a high volume of kitchen protection UL 300 fire suppression systems, or pre-engineered fire suppression systems. And we have been regulated in that space by the UL 300 standard since 1994. Well, for the first time since 1994, we are starting to see deep fat fryers that are so efficient that they burn faster and hotter than the UL standard allows for. In order to test a fryer and get a fire coverage for it, you have to set it on fire and then let it burn for 2 minutes. What's happening is the fire's so big and so fast and so hot that the fryer is overflowing and putting that fire on the floor before the 2-minute pre-burn happens, right? So this is creating a moment where we're going to need to go and have dialogue with UL 300 standard and maybe change that testing standard in order to accommodate the new technology in this space. And we haven't had to do that since the 90s with this. So that's changing the game a little bit on that fast food sort of side of the business, and the UL 300 kitchen system side of the business as well. There's a lot of avenues to this business.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a lot of education right here in this episode, gentlemen. I couldn't think of two better leaders in the industry to give us this knowledge, especially on the battery part. And I feel like we need to be continuing this conversation in many episodes coming in the future, and hopefully both of you will join us as there's developments on that and anything in the industry. So Chris, Jamie, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you joining me on the KOB podcast.
You bet. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
And thank you to our audience as well for joining us. If you missed any of our previous episodes, be sure to check us out wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, I'm Tyler Trumbauer with Kistler O'Brien Fire Protection.